Hey, I'm Rick. Welcome back to Dirt Gear TV. Behind me I've got a 2023 R1, and we're going to be doing some spicy performance upgrades to this bike today, so stick around. So this is my 2023 R1, and really in this video we're going to be focusing on mods and things that we can do to the bike to squeeze every tiny bit of horsepower out of the CP4 engine. But just so you guys know, these are performance mods that you can likely do on just about any sport bike that's out there and a lot of other bikes as well. Now, if you are a follower of the channel, you probably know that I've already done a few mods to this bike, so let me show you guys what I've done so far. The most significant, of course, is the exhaust. I think most of us know generally that the most important performance mods that you can do on any type of motorcycle is going to involve the exhaust system. That's usually step one, the intake and the exhaust. So I personally am running an M4 exhaust. I just liked how minimal it is. I like the black. Now, I've already eliminated the bread box and all of the catalytic converter and all of that mess. So step one for any performance mod, you are going to need an unrestricted exhaust system. So when you remove an exhaust system and you don't touch anything else, you've now detuned the bike. You can either throw an error code, the bike itself may go into limp mode where you may not get full power anyway. So a lot of guys will go ahead and they'll remove their exhaust and their bike will actually perform worse than it did before they ever touched anything. So now that our bike's breathing better than a professional freediver at sea level, we need to make some other changes to adjust for the ECU and the fueling. We do need to gain access to the fuel tank and some other things on the front side of the bike, but step one for this is going to be removing the seat. Get our seat off. So the next step is going to be removing some of the fairings on the bike. I'm going to start on this side and we'll just do the identical thing on the opposite side. Now, once we get this trim piece off, we have access here to this front nose section. So this is a standard number 2 Phillips. Then we just have one Allen. So to remove the tank, we've got one single through bolt back here, the back of the tank, and I believe we should have one on this side and one on the other side. This one's a through bolt, so you can just put your open wrench on one side. Okay, so under the tank, we've got these 2 vent lines. We've got one here, we got another vent over there. It appears that only one of these has this clip to remove. Ooh. Try not to crunch your fingers doing that maneuver. Just gonna tip the tank a little bit to the side like I have here. Okay, we're gonna take the one clip off. That one's straight forward. There's one. Now we just have the fuel line left is the last thing with the tank. Let me get a little flathead screwdriver in there. Okay, there we go. All right, so that's unclipped. There we go. Hopefully we don't lose too much fuel. So now that the tank's off, I've got access here to the air box, and we are going to have to remove this air box to get our Blockoff plates. Now, personally, I like these Graves. One thing about this is these actually come with some fairly decent instructions. They're going to be, different depending on the years. I do believe this part actually covers quite a few other generations of R1s. You guys correct me, I'm sure, in the comments if I'm mistaken about that. But I do think this is the same part number for a lot of the other years of R1s. We've got some screws that we need to remove to get access to the bottom portion of the air box. See, I think it's probably going to be a 5mm Allen to get the bottom portion of this off. It looks like we've just got 2 on the back, and I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4 on the front. That one was already loosened. Oh, that one's pretty loose too. For some reason, these 2 center ones on mine, this one was completely loose. This one was maybe just finger tight. this. It's an easy one to remove. This rear vent also has a clip. So 2 vent lines, one on the rear, one on the right side of the bike right underneath here. Okay, now the lower portion we can remove. We do have an electrical wire here, vent stacks. Just unplug that guy. All right, guys, we're getting close. Down underneath this is where we should find our block-off plates. This one is an 8mm. There's just a little clip here. I push down and pull up on the piece here. So there's a cable on the right side and there's a cable on the left side. We'll get this piece removed. All right, so now we're really down to the open throttle bodies here at this point. So I would not recommend using an air compressor. In fact, I wouldn't even recommend wiping any surfaces in here unless you're going to block these off. Now we're getting down to the air injection system. So what it is, it's the block-off plates belong here. There's one there. There's one on the right side here. And then it appears we've got a little solenoid here that probably does control the air injection system. First, I'm going to disconnect our little solenoid here on the left side. We've got a couple more Allen. These look like they're probably the same, 5mm. They're securing our block-off plates. There's 4 in total, 2 and 2. Ooh, they used a lot of Loctite. Last one. Being very careful not to get any sand in those throttle bodies. The whole piece comes out. So this is what we're left with. We won't need this to go back into the bike once we start reassembling. Okay, so we've got our 2 Graves block-off plates. Basically, it looks like the logo is facing down and forward. So if you were looking from the front part of the bike, you would just be able to read their logo. And I think that's going to be the same way on both. So now, for whatever reason, Yamaha really felt it necessary to put a ton of thread lock on these things. So only for that reason, I'm not going to use a lot. I'm just going to use a tiny little drop. At least these 2 in the middle, I can use the wrench. Speed things up a little bit. Okay. Done. Now at this stage, because this bike has the full exhaust work done, and this bike has already received a tune from Two Wheel Dyno Works, there is another step here in this process, and that means removing my O2 sensors. Basically, we send this in to get the most powerful tune, right? So ECU's back behind this fairing. I sent that off. It's already been tuned to maximum power levels. So when I keep the O2 sensors connected to this, it's going to modify our fueling tables within that ECU. So at this point, we just need to completely remove the O2 sensors. I've done that to many other bikes. You're not going to damage the bike if it's tuned properly. That's how it should be done. So on the left side, this is what, I don't know if you guys can see that, but that's what that one looks like. I am just going to disconnect it. Okay. So that's the easy solution. You don't have to worry about plugs, bungs, anything like that. You just disconnect her. And then I'm just going to hide it back in the same wire loom. That side's disconnected. This one we may have to trace all the way to the top. This one's much easier. When I pull the wire, so that's the pivot for the rear end, and it's right behind here. And then if we follow that one to the top, you can see it's this wire here. This one I don't think can really make too much trouble back here, so I'm just going to kind of leave that one resting right there. It is attached here, so it shouldn't go too far. I just realized something here, guys. The solenoid that I removed has that little push plug here, and this is part of our intake shroud. I looked everywhere for a piece of plastic or something lightweight I could plug that with. I couldn't find anything in the garage, so this was the solution. Saw the original piece right off. When in doubt, just use the original equipment. Okay. Snug. Okay, this bottom lip tucks into the frame. I don't know if you guys can see that, but you could put this on and see how this bottom is not tucked. then the whole bottom of your air duct is going to be open and it's not going to get the correct readings from your sensors. Now there is one other step before we go any further with the lower portion of the air intake box. Remember, we had that vent on the right side that we have since removed. So that is what this final rubber grommet is going to be for. So this one is just going to slip over here. We're going to block that off. All right, next thing is we're just going to take our clamp off of the old line for the air block-offs. And we're just going to slip our clamp. Oh, it's a bit loose. Okay, so all I did was I stuck this in some pliers and I just crimped this down a bit just to get this to be a bit more snug. Yeah, that's perfect. Perfectly tight. It doesn't have to be, this is not an extreme application, guys. Unlike my dune buggy over here that's running 43 PSI, I don't have 40 PSI going through this little plug. So just something to keep that from loosening up is all. All right, so we're gonna get that one plugged back in, tuck that underneath, drop our air box back on, go back to our 5mm. A lot of cool tech in these bikes. Adjustable air velocity stacks. The way the air filter works here, there's 3 little tabs there, so that we'll slide the back of that into those little locations. Now, that'll seat all the way down once it's in the right position. We'll drop down past that lip. We'll get our top half of the air box reinstalled. All edges should be flush. Shouldn't have to put any pressure on anything. We'll get our box screws put back together. If you want to use a dab of Loctite on these, I suppose you could. I like to do a cross pattern just to make sure that the cover is going on nice and flush, kind of like the way you would do an oil pan. We'll get our vent line reconnected to the air box. Get our clip back in place. All right, we'll reconnect the fuel injectors. We will put this material back. It's either some type of heat protective or maybe just an abrasive, a pad to protect from abrasion on the air box. All right, it's almost time to get our fuel tank back on. I am going to reconnect our fuel line up here to the fuel rail. That slides all the way up. Remember that lip, the clip goes on. Yep, and prevents that from coming off. So make sure that is fully seated before you drop that clip back. Fuel line first. Make sure that one is fully seated as well before your clip locks back in, fully seated. Of course, we'll reconnect our power to the fuel pump. And then we've just got these 2 vent lines. Now I just wrestled with this tank a little bit to get all the bolts lined back up. Here's what I'd recommend. Don't put the rear in yet. Leave that one off completely. And then once you get these front ones lined up, what I had to do is I had to put a little pressure, actually quite a bit of pressure, pushing the tank forward towards the air box before I could get these 2 side bolts to line up. And then I put the rear bolt in. These little Phillips ones, those are the ones that hold this top fairing portion on. Now we'll get our little side fairings put back. We just got to get our seat back on and we should be ready to roll. And by the way, guys, if you're looking for a more comfortable seat, I really like these Saddlemen seats, way more comfortable than factory seat. Just be careful when doing this, guys. You can see I am super careful, and even I took off some of the paint right there when I was taking the seat off one day. Okay, so I just finished getting all of our mods done to my 23R1 here. So my bike has now been completed and finished. So just to recap with you guys, here's what we've done. Most significant, number 1 is going to be a free-flowing exhaust. It really doesn't matter what type of bike you have. I don't care if it's a cruiser, I don't care if it's an adventure bike, I don't care if it's supermoto, I don't care if it's a crotch rocket. Now there is a little bit of a caveat there. You can't just slap an exhaust on a factory bike and expect the big power gains. And of course, you're always going to be best if you can bring your bike to an actual dyno and have your specific bike tuned exact to the dyno. That being said, the very next best thing, in my opinion, is going to be a mail-in flash service. And I say that also with the caveat that it's got to be through a company you trust. I trust Two Wheel Dyno Works with all of my bikes. So that's my recommendation. Now you've got your exhaust done and you just got your ECU back. Okay, well now we've got some serious power increases happening. That's when you're gonna take a bike like this from 150 some odd horsepower at the rear wheel, all the way up to that golden territory, pushing close to 200 horsepower at the rear wheel. So the thing's gonna be an absolute madman. Don't forget those two major things that you're gonna have to do to get the absolute most performance out of it is disconnect your O2 sensors. You can either do that like I did, where you just disconnect the wires up above. And then don't forget that your air injection system it's doing some things that you probably don't want it to do, and those are all emission-based things. So this is now basically a track-ready bike at this point, because there's nothing more that I can do unless I get into serious performance mods, taking the engine apart, unrestricting the air filter. Even in that regard, we're talking about a couple of horsepower, not much. So this bike's just about as fast as it's ever going to be. At this point, the only thing more I could do is probably start stripping some weight off of the bike. As for this video, I am out of time for this one. So this is how you can take your factory bike and get the absolute top performance levels out of whatever motorcycle you have. These are going to be the first and foremost steps you're going to want to take. So thank you guys for watching Dirt Gear TV. We'll be back with some more videos this year very soon, I promise. I'm Rick. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.